Welcome everyone. Today we're going to go over the rectifier patch in the GT-1000. Once again, we do all this on stream. And so if you want to join, every Friday about 6 p.m. Pacific, I will be on stream on YouTube, dialing in a tone for the next guitar amp in the GT-1000 and other modelers in the future. The next one up is going to be a Bachner Uberschall, but today we're going to be focused on the dual rectifier in the GT-1000. Actually, I'm not sure if it's a dual rectifier or a triple rectifier. It just says RECTI STACK. Also want to preface this saying I'm not an American amp kind of person. I don't really deal with the dual rectifiers, the 5150s or the Soldanas. I'm more into like the Marshalls and the Oranges. However, I really wanted to dial in a rectifier tone because it was used on Alice in Chains' Dirt. At least an early pre-production model for Jerry Cantrell, and I've always liked that album's tone, and so I figured why not try to dial in a dual rectifier tone. Alright, so what I'm hearing there without the boost is that it's a little flubby on the low end. That's expected of a dual rectifier if I remember correctly. And basically what is very common is folks put a tube screamer or some other kind of boost in front of the dual rectifier. So we'll be doing that shortly. However, I do want to comment that with the gain switch on this amplifier on high, it actually has quite enough gain. However, I don't think an actual rectifier is nearly as high. At the mid-level here, that sounds more like what I would expect a rectifier to have. And I'm only at noon for gain, so that seems to be about where a dual rectifier is supposed to be in terms of having enough saturation for metal. But high is actually quite a bit. And you can get really kind of sludgy with that if you really chose to. Okay, so I'm going to actually drive the gain up a little bit on high to show you how much gain there actually is on this. Let's get to like 100 gain, and the GT-1000 goes to 120, so 100 is actually already a lot to me. Yeah, that's a lot of gain. I wouldn't drive with this much gain. I actually had it set to low before. My gain was at 60, like right at the middle, and I actually had a boost going into it. The boost we're using is a Centa OD, which I believe is a Klon Centaur. And I have tone at 15, zero drive as usual, level at 100, and I actually have it hit the bottom end a little bit less hard, so I have it at negative 10. And that seems to be a pretty good match for the rectifier. Alright, so it sounds pretty good, pretty tight. It kind of actually reminds me of what I remember from like a Mark series. So it gives you that kind of like twangy, trebly kind of vibe on the bottom end. One thing we did on stream was that someone had actually told me during the stream that the treble and presence control can be kind of compensated for each other, and you can get two different like tones with it. It's kind of cool because they actually do sound quite different. So right now I have the treble lower and the presence higher because that's what I prefer, but there was actually kind of a usable tone when you push the treble higher and then the presence lower. So we're going to do that. We're going to bump the presence down to about 30. We're going to boost the treble up to about 80. Now let's go back to that same riff, but with my original settings. I think it's actually kind of cool that you can get two different sounds from it. I don't really find that with other amps. Usually you have to kind of dial in a very specific tone per amp. Kind of a hot take there. I feel like most tube amps do one thing really, really well. So it's interesting that there's an amp that's actually quite old now that does multiple things well. And I can get a really cool sort of Mark-like tone with it, and I can get kind of more of a fuzzier tone with it as well. And I think that's really, really cool. But I think the character of a rectifier for me is always been kind of a weird one. I personally have always thought a rectifier to be way too scooped, and I think the GT-1000's model is even more scooped. As with the orange, I feel like the GT-1000 tends to over-exaggerate the qualities of the amplifiers that are given, and so if you were to take out the EQ block that I put on here, it sounds really scooped. So it sounds really scooped to me. I actually add quite a bit at about 2 kilohertz just to fill in that upper mids. And that's actually something I want to talk about later, but let's listen to it with this EQ block turned on. So I think adding that slight presence in the upper mids makes the rectifier more likable for me. Personally, that is actually a tone that I would totally be using. But I kind of wish I had a Badlander now, because a Badlander is an EL34 based rectifier, and an EL34 just generally has the upper mids that are kind of like screaming a little bit, and I kind of like that. Obviously, this is older than a Badlander, but I kind of wish there was an option to do kind of an EL34 6L6 kind of thing in the GT-1000. Obviously, again, older, much older than something like an FM3 where you can do that. But I think that adding the EQ block does definitely help and lets you put that in there if you really, really wanted to. All right, last thing, let's put some lead tones on here. With lead tone, I add an EQ before the cabinet just to boost 1K a little bit. That's just what I prefer. I add some reverb and some delay, and this is what this lead tone sounds like. I think it actually sounds pretty good. But yeah, I really don't have much else to say about the lead tone. I think it sounds really, really good, and it's smooth enough on the high end. It actually does a really good job, in my opinion, of cleaning up the high end, but adding enough presence up there as well. So like high notes like that sounds really amazing to me. It's sharp enough to cut through, but it's like warm enough to where it feels impactful. So something like a Marshall like this one right here will generally be a little sharp on the high end for me, and I think this kind of does it better, actually. All right, I think it's actually going to do it for me. I don't really have much else to say. I think this amp is really, really good. I actually think that's a really good tone that I might use for leads. And I do want to reiterate, getting that kind of markish sound versus getting the rectifier sound and being able to have a little bit of both is kind of cool in how you like adjust this treble and the presence on top. I think that's actually a really cool thing. And yeah, so if you liked the video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing if you want to get updated on the content I'm doing. Every Friday there will be a stream where we dive into another amp model and we just chat, and I had a beer last time and it was great. This Friday specifically, I also have a new guitar to unbox, so hope to see y'all there. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. Take care everyone, have a great rest of your day.